Thank you for joining us tonight. We have not been with you for a while, but tonight is a very special night indeed. You're with yours truly, Jonathan Williams, and to my right, we have Miss Wendy Holley that is joining us tonight. Very interesting program that we have for you tonight. Would like to put a disclaimer on the front end for any adults that are looking at this and there are children that are in the room. Govern yourselves accordingly. There will be some things that will be talked about on tonight that will be very disturbing, to say the least. And so I want to put that out there. Be very mindful. The children are seeing this. This is going to be some revelation, truth, and you're going to hear some things tonight that's going to be quite shocking. And this is something that needs to be talked about. You know, oftentimes there are things that are happening in people's lives, and sitting right in the church, you would never know these things because they come to church with a mask on, that face, they put the smile on, and they're hurting and broken. And years are going by in the church, and abuse is happening right there. And sometimes we can be so spiritual about things that we're not tapped in to the very things that are going on right there in the church. Tonight, I'm going to bring you a perspective on some things. There's going to be some things that are shared from Miss Wendy Holley. And I am somewhat disturbed. I really am. I've had the opportunity to talk with this young lady. She came to me and we talked, and she advised me that she wanted to tell her story after decades of holding this stuff in. She wants to set the record straight, speak her truth, speak her experience, speak her hurt, her disappointments. And I'm going to allow her to do that. And there's nobody that's going to stop this. She will not be muted. She will not be intimidated here. She will only have this platform for her benefit to really just tell a truth that has been hidden for quite some time. And tonight is her night. Yes, tonight is her night. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce to some and present to others Miss Wendy Holley. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Doing well. You know, Wendy, we've had the opportunity to talk. We've had quite a few conversations about some things in your life that you've experienced and went through. And, you know, I must say, for the things that we talked about, there were some things that you shared with me that was just quite shocking. And I don't mean that from the sense that, you know, these things don't happen in the church, but I mean it from the perspective that you had so many people that this happened around right there in the church. It was close to you. And while all this abuse was happening, you were the one who was victimized, in that it was as if you were the villain for speaking your truth, for speaking out on the abuse. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to, you know, get a little bit of the history in the church. Just tell me and introduce yourself to the people that may be seeing this. And I just want to say before you get started, I appreciate you. I appreciate your courage. I appreciate you taking a stand, because there are those pastors that will try to intimidate you and try to keep you quiet on these things. And oftentimes, you know, we'll carry that fear and hide it out of shame and guilt. But I want to say to you tonight, I appreciate you. This is your platform. This is your time. This is for you to speak your truth. And no intimidation here. You speak your truth and you speak it with confidence, because, you know, at the end of the day, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And he is the truth. And, you know, the truth don't need no backing. It stands by itself. So without further ado, give me a little history about yourself and, the church and yeah, how did this all start?
Well, um, my family, my mom and dad,
Mm-hmm.
they used to attend the original Bible church in Arlington. I think that was the name of it. And at the time, my mom only had two children, which was my oldest sister, my older brother. Later, the church split, and the pastor got a church in Memphis, Tennessee. When my mother had three more children, me and my sister and brother. So we was really born in the church. We were raised in the church.
Right.
Um, that's where it all began.
Okay. So the history, um, as far as your family, you all actually grew up in the church. You started when the church started. I know you shared with me that the church originated in Arlington. It was originally Original Bible Church back then.
I think that's what the name of it was back then.
And then it transitioned to Fundamental
Pentecostal Church.
Okay. All right. So for the most part, you came on the scene when it was Fundamental Pentecostal.
Right. I was born in the church.
Gotcha.
My mom was pregnant with us in the church. So
Okay. So we spoke about, many things. I just want to, touch on some sensitive topics. And again, I want to give the disclaimer, parents, please govern yourselves accordingly, because we're going to be talking about some heavy stuff tonight. And some of this stuff does not need to be heard by children. So please, if you have children, young children under 15, send them in the next room, let them play on the PlayStation, whatever, because we're going to dive deep on some things tonight. Tell me something. How did you end up spending nights at the pastor's home above the church, I believe you told me? And if you could tell us a little bit about the individual that you'll be speaking on tonight as well, to kind of, give us a picture and paint the picture of exactly who this is. And more importantly, how did you end up in this situation where you were spending nights with this man?
Well, it started, the pastor, he had two first cousins. They lived above the church.
Mm-hmm.
And as a child, I took on to him like a father figure, because at the time my parents, they were separated.
Mm-hmm.
But I would see how he was with the other young children, mostly the girls, and it appeared that he was more of like a father figure and really loved the young children in the church. When I would go to the bathroom, he would come downstairs, because the stairs was right next to the ladies' restroom, and I would run into him, whether he's coming downstairs or coming out of his office before he go in church, and he would always give me a hug. Sometimes he'll ask me to come in his office. At the time, I had been like probably 10 years old, and I would go in there, and he would give me a real tight hug.
So this started at the age of 10.
10 years old.
All right.
And I never thought nothing about it, being so young.
Mm-hmm.
But later on, one of his first cousins, she prophesied in church, and said that God told the pastor to put me in his home on weekends, where her and her cousin, I guess, could like show us how to cook, clean. I didn't understand it, because I come from parents that cooked and cleaned. So
right.
I didn't understand why I was going there. But he said that God told him to put me in the house with him. There wasn't any questions about it. Therefore, I began going over there after service on Friday nights, and spend the night Friday night, Saturday night. Sunday we had church at night, and then I returned home.
Okay. So this is kind of, if you will, this is what kind of prompted his escalation or access to you, is bringing the narrative of God into the equation to say that God told him that he wanted you to spend nights or spend time with him at his home on the weekends.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So you're put in this position. You're over the pastor's house. You're spending nights. All right. At what point, at this point, did the violation and the abuse start, or what happened to kind of enter into that realm of where you felt there was something that was amiss, something that was off here?
The first time I would say it happened, we were in Hot Springs. We went on a church trip. I was staying with the mother of the church, along with the other young girls, because we were going to have a sleepover. The pastor, he didn't come the same day we did. He came the next day. But we were all getting ready for a slumber party. And I was sitting on the couch, and there was a knock on the door. And one of the young girls ran and opened up the door. And it was Thomas Price. It was Thomas Price. And he walked in and he said, "Oh, I just come to let you all know that, hey, I made it here." And, we were all saying, "Hey, how are you?" And so out of nowhere, he said, "Wendy."
Let me say this to you, not to cut you off. I need to reiterate, you're safe here. This is one place where you don't have to be afraid. Again, you speak your truth, and whatever that consists of, whatever and whoever you need to name, you do that. There is no limitations. There is no shackles on your mouth. From what you have told me and what you have shared with me, this is something that needs to be talked about. This needs to be brought to the forefront. The lies, the deception has been hidden for so many decades. And this is part of your deliverance. So don't feel shame by speaking to your captor or speaking to your abuser. You have no shame here. And I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to give you the platform so that you can speak your truth and that you can speak the truth as you experienced it, not what other people think or think that did not happen. You speak your truth based on what happened to you, and you speak your truth and you say what you need to say. I just kind of felt like I needed to interject that as you were talking. I kind of saw you hesitate as if you were making some type of error by calling a name. Not here. Not here. Continue.
Well, thank you. And I would like to call the name because with me saying pastor, it feels like I'm still hiding when I know I didn't do anything wrong. And people need to know, children need to know, parents need to know, the other assistant pastors need to know who this person is, and it's Thomas Earl Price. Now I will continue. He came, when he walked in the door, he asked me, Thomas Price, to go take a walk with him. My mother didn't come on that trip. She had to work. My father did attend the outing, but I began to walk with him to his daughter's condo. She was living in her condo with another, I think with one of the ushers of the church. And so as we walking around, from our condo. It's nighttime, so it was like June or July.
Right.
So it had to be like at least going on 8 o'clock at night because then it was dark outside.
Mhm.
And as we were walking, he stopped me midway. And I remember like it was yesterday. I was to the left, he was to my right. And stood in front of me. And he said, you haven't given me a hug. And, being so young, I said, oh, I'm sorry, because that's what he always would do is hug
Right.
me real tight. So I gave him a hug, but that hug was different. As he hugged me, his hands went down my butt, and I'm a child. And so when he did that, at that moment, I felt as if all of my innocence left me.
Mm-hmm.
Because number one, I'm a child. Number two, my father never hugged me like that.
Right.
So I knew right from wrong. Hey, how your parents raise you, hey, don't let no boys do this.
Right.
So I knew what he was doing to me was wrong. And at that moment, it was like I was just numb.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't think. It was like I was frozen. And I remember him saying, come on, let's go. And so before he did that, he offered me money. And the next day we was going to go ride the go-karts. And I love riding the go-karts. And I remember it cost $2.50 to ride the go-karts. And so he offered me $5 to ride the go-karts twice and told me not to say anything. Now, as I'm older, I didn't think like I think now, But if you know you didn't do anything wrong, why say don't tell anybody?
Right.
I didn't think like that as a child because I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
So he and I began to walk, and we went to his daughter's condo. And as we walk in, I don't even remember speaking to her because I was still in shock.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting down on the sofa up against the wall, and her and the other sister in the church, they were in the kitchen cooking. And she asked me what was wrong. Thomas Price's daughter asked me what was wrong. And I didn't say anything because I was still in shock. I heard her, but it was like I couldn't speak.
Mm-hmm.
And Thomas Price interjected and said, oh, she just want to go. No, they're having a slumber party. She just want to go back over there with the other girls. And I remember she asked me, looking at me dead in my face and said, is that true?
So it's kind of like she suspected something was going on or something had happened.
For her to say that.
Yeah.
So we ended up leaving. Probably like we stayed there for like 10, 15 minutes and we walked back. And I didn't feel like being around anyone, not even my friends in the church. We grew up in the church,
Mm-hmm.
me and these young girls. I went in the room, I got in the bed, and I remember one of the assistant pastor, his daughter, was trying to get me to get out the bed, asking me what was wrong. And I just need to be by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was wanting to go home. And I just cried myself to sleep that night. And the next morning, that's when Thomas Price, the pastor, was trying to offer me the $5
Mm-hmm.
to ride the go-karts.
So, not to cut you off, but I want to interject something. So basically, when he did what he did and he put his hand down on your backside, even at such a young age, you felt something in you that said, hey, this ain't right.
Well, yes, because as children, the upbringing starts in the home. And when your parents say, hey, don't let no boy kiss you, don't let no boy touch you, then that was the pastor doing it.
Mm-hmm.
The boys never did it, but the pastor was. Thomas Price was.
Mm-hmm.
So everything my mother brought us up not to let a boy do, that's what the pastor, Thomas Price, was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, I'm like, okay, but he's doing it.
So you guys are on a trip,
Mm-hmm.
and this is kind of where the actual abuse started, as far as the physical interaction between you and him. I want to backpedal here for a minute, and I want to go back to when you were spending the nights. His cousins that you spoke of, did they not suspect anything about his behavior that was not normal? And, did you feel that you could tell anybody, about what was happening? And if you didn't feel you could tell anybody, why not?
Well, even though I was there in the house with them, his cousins, Thomas Price cousins, I never felt that they were there to help me.
Mm-hmm.
I never felt that they were women I could go sit and talk to. I mean, how can I when one of the cousins is in love with her first cousin, the pastor, Thomas Price? So when you see this, I never could have imagined. You know, it's like you're outside looking in,
Mm-hmm.
but then when you get there, your eyes become open.
Right.
You see everything so clear. And I say that I don't like to say things and not be able to back it up. Um, his cousin, Barbara, we would butt heads a lot. Um, and I do believe because it was jealousy. And as I stated, she wanted the attention from her cousin, Thomas Price, her first cousin. I never understood that. And I say that because if he's talking to me or if he's walking past by the door, it's just that, that attention she's craving, whining as a grown woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a young girl. I'm seeing this. I didn't get that from the other first cousin, only Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
I never was able to talk to her. Many times, I remember Thomas Price had a routine every Friday night when I would go there,
Mm-hmm.
and we've left service, and so I go upstairs, either watch TV. Well, I would keep my regular clothes on that I wore to church.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go knock on his door, Thomas Price's door, tell him good night, even though the way he was, molesting me and abusing me, I would just still go say good night. But he had this thing. He would always say, go bring me a drink of water first
Mm-hmm.
and put your night clothes on. I had to have my nightgown on before I said goodnight.
Mm.
Um, I felt that was because it's less clothing, more easy access.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go bring him some water and take it to him and tell him goodnight. And then that's when he would just hug me real close, face to face.
So this was his routine when
His
you were.
routine.
Now, were you at the house alone with him when this would happen?
No, they would be there. His cousins would be there.
Okay.
They wouldn't be in his room. They might be in the room watching TV or doing something else in the house. But yes, they would both be there when it would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And one time I was talking to him and he just kept, Thomas Price, that is.
Just take your time.
He would, Thomas Price would pinch my nipples real hard. Real hard. And I would tell him to stop. I would push him away. It would be in his room. And I remember one night he said, shh, be quiet, be quiet. And I didn't say anything else. He got out of his chair. He had a recliner. And he got up, went to the door, and he saw his first cousin, Barbara, sitting at his steps, eavesdropping what was going on in the room with he and I. Now, what I gathered from that, if you say that you're a man of God and you're living right, why would she be at the doorstep eavesdropping you?
Mm-hmm.
I always felt that she knew what he was doing.
Right.
And I say that because anytime, I don't mean be just jumping around, but
take your time.
It came to me one night. I was in the kitchen. I was frying some bologna,
mm-hmm.
and it was on a Saturday night. And so Thomas Price walked in the kitchen, and I'm up there at the stove, and I do not know what made him say this to me as a child. I don't know what made him just come in there and say this to me, but he was standing up beside the refrigerator, and his exact words were, you know, Clem's hair on her vagina is longer than my middle finger. And as I'm sitting there cooking the bologna, I stopped. I said, what did you say? I knew I heard him right. He repeated himself. I said her hair on her vagina is longer than my middle finger.
He's talking about his first cousin.
His first cousin.
One living with him.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I couldn't believe it. And I remember saying, how do you know that? He told me about the story where they lived off a street called Chelsea. And there was like a wide, like opening, like in the door.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't close all the way, and how he would see her take baths. He'd stand there and watch her. I knew he wasn't lying because one day there was a man that came. I think it was something wrong with the air. So the man had to go in the attic to fix it. And the man, he fixed the problem. And I heard the door close. We're all there at the house, his two cousins and me, and Thomas Price. And so I get cold fast. So I stood on the rim of the tub and I tiptoed to close the vent. Because the vent, I've never known anyone to have a vent right over over the tub.
So this is in the bathroom. There's a vent
directly over the tub.
Okay.
So I stood on the rim and I closed the vent because I was cold. And I took off my clothes. Remind you, I'm still young. And I heard some footsteps.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that he can go in the attic from inside the house. And all of a sudden, the vent opens back up. And I looked up, and it scared me because now I know somebody's watching me.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did, and I had just got in the tub. So what I did, I got out the tub, I wrapped myself up, and I just dried off. And I put clean clothes on, even though I had not taken a bath. I put my clothes back, clean clothes on. And I remember I opened up the bathroom door to leave out, and Thomas Price said to me, "Are you going to take a bath?" And I said, "I did," even though I was lying.
Mm-hmm.
He said, no, you didn't. And that's when I looked at him. I said, "You're watching me."
Mm.
For him to tell me what I didn't do, you have to be looking over
Right.
the tub.
Looking through the vent.
Right. And so I that bothered me, but I just never could depend on the two ladies in the church, which was his first cousin. I couldn't confide in them. One cousin was not like that with him, but the other cousin was, and she always exhibited jealousy toward me.
Mm-hmm.
She would do things that I didn't understand. In Pentecostal church, you're told you can't wear pants.
Right.
This particular Saturday night, my sister was there with me that weekend, and Thomas Price was getting rid of some old clothes, and he's in a bathroom, had just taken a bath, and he's grooming himself up, and Barbara decides to get the clothes that Thomas Price is going to give to the Goodwill, and she wore the pants in the house. She put them on. It was some burnt orange pants. I remember like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at my sister and I said, "I thought we couldn't wear pants." Where we were taught not to do, they were doing it there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a lot of things that I noticed. I've been left there with him by myself, deliberately left there by myself. And I felt that as a child, I should have been protected.
That brings something to my attention. What, if any, things did he try to get you to participate in with him, being alone with him? What things specifically was he doing or trying to do to you?
One Friday night, Clem, his cousin, she was working at FedEx. I think she would have to be at work or leave the house like at 9:30 to be at FedEx.
Mm-hmm.
So it was on a Friday night. I went there by myself. A lot of times I would try to get my sister to go with me to feel more protected.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he won't try nothing. So Clem left to go to work. So that left Barbara. So as I walked up the steps with my little bags for the night, I saw her bags packed. And I said, "Where are you going?" And she stated that she was going to her sister's house for the weekend. And I said, "So who's going to be here with me?"
Mm-hmm.
And she stated, "Oh, Apostle's here. He here." I didn't understand how two grown women will leave a child in the house with a grown man for the whole weekend. I don't care if that man never tried anything with you. It just don't look right. But she left. to go to her sister's house, and I did what I always do. I started praying to God to protect me, and I knocked on his door to tell him good night. He told me, go bring him some water, put my night clothes on, and come back and tell him good night. So this night I did. And as I'm sitting in his chair, he has a little desk. And there's a chair, and I'm sitting in the chair. He's sitting in his recliner.
Now, not to cut you off. Now, is this at his house, or is this at the church above the church?
This was at Fundamental Pentecostal Church.
Okay,
the
so
house
this is above
the church.
Okay, go ahead.
And I was watching Mama's Family, and Thomas Price asked me to go get a blanket. And I thought he was probably cold, so I get up and I go get him a blanket.
Mm-hmm.
Before I go get a blanket, he said, there's a green blanket, either on a dryer or on the washing machine, but it was on a dryer. And I said, okay. So I go get him a blanket, and I handed him the blanket, and he wanted me to spread the blanket out on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So I spread it out on the floor, but I sat back down in my seat, and he asked me, no, get down there. And I didn't want to get down there. He kept saying, get down there. We kept going back and forth. And so I got down there on the green blanket.
You're just a child.
Yeah. I had to have been, I want to say about 14 by then, about 14 years old. And so he got down on the floor also. And this is me, and that's the TV. So he comes like in front of me, and he begins to rub his hands all over me. And I kept telling him to stop, stop, stop. But he didn't like me telling him to stop. Then he got more aggressive. His nails was here in my arm, just holding me down, forcing himself on me. And I kept saying, I'm a virgin. I'm a virgin. And he started laughing. And he kept forcing himself on me. And I remember he said to me, by then, he's kind of like he's on top of me. So with my head on the floor, I could see what's what's up under his bed, because his bed's like this high off the floor.
Mm-hmm.
He had nothing but guns under there, rifles, because he deer hunts a lot. And he said, look up under that bed. And that's when I looked up under the bed and saw the guns. And there was a closet behind me. And he told me there were guns in there too. So at that time, I was willing to let him do whatever he had to do so that I could live. Because at that time, you're threatening me now. And he held me down. He took his penis out and he rubbed it up against my left leg, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, laughing back and forth. And I sat there on the floor with tears in my eyes. I was crying, but it was very silently. And he rubbed his penis on my leg about 5-6 times. And then he ejaculated right there on my thighs.
Mm.
He I got up. He told me to take the blanket and put it in the wash machine and start the wash machine up. I went in the bathroom. I made sure the vent was closed, and I scrubbed my body. I mean, for a long time, just scrubbing my body. Scrubbing my body.
Mm.
He told me that everything that he thought that by him, Thomas Price telling me that, you know, he told me that God told him that I was supposed to be his wife. He's been telling me that since I was about 11 years old.
So let me get this straight. So he basically tells you that God tells him that it is his will for you to come to his house so that you can learn how to cook / clean.
Mm-hmm.
It started out with that. Now, hereafter, he's now telling you that God told him, a 40-something-year-old man, 50-something, that you are to be his wife.
Yes.
Okay. Just to bring perspective on what you're saying. Go ahead.
I you know, I have to say, because I know that some of the viewers are going to be watching and thinking, well, where was your mother at? You know,
And your father.
and my father.
Yeah.
By then, Thomas Price had kicked my dad out of church. Something he does very well is kick people out of the church. My mom would work, but he threatened my life. Thomas Price threatened my mother's life. If I ever told anybody that he was going to kill me, my mom. So I couldn't say nothing. So I was willing to go through that by myself, just so that my mom would be okay. You know, as a child, you take things seriously when it's being told to you. You know, you feel intimidated, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you have nowhere to turn. So I was willing to go on through that, the abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse. I was willing to go through that just to spare my mom's life.
Interesting point. I want to plug something in. You told me in our previous discussion about an encounter with him where he tried to use your parents' situation. Speaking of your parents, tried to use your parents' situation as a means to train you to be his wife and being submissive.
Right.
What did he try to make you do?
I'll have to start from the beginning when this happened, that on this day. It was another church trip, and we all went to Biloxi, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just like children, teenagers, we're all at the beach having fun, just playing. And he didn't like, Thomas Price didn't like it that I was at the beach playing with the young boys in the church. Those the same age as me. So still around this time, I'm still about 13 because I was in middle school. And so we're playing and we're playing. And so Thomas Price sends his cousin out, Barbara, to come and get me out of, like, from the beach, that he wanted to talk to me. And I looked at her and I said, no, I'm not going. And so she said, Apostle wants you. Apostle wants you. He really want to talk to you. So I looked back and I told him that I'll be back. Well, he was in his condo. And so he asked me to bring him this little yellow notepad. As soon as I walked in from the beach, I'm wet, still got on my bathing suit.
Mm-hmm.
So I go give it to him. And he's laying in the bed, at the head of the bed. And I'm sitting on the side of the bed. And he said, I want you to write down everything I tell you to write down. So I already knew he was upset. Why? I don't know. Because remind you, I never saw him come out there to get me, only his cousin. So he said, allowance, I give you $100 allowance every Sunday. Add that up.
As a teenager, he's giving you $100
He'll give me $100
every week.
Every Sunday, and I go back home before I go back home. And I thought
that's called hush money.
Yeah, I know
that's
now.
what that is.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
I thought, because my sister would go over there too, but I thought that we got the same amount of allowance until she said, "Where did you get that money from?" And I remember it's $100 bill. And I said, "Apostle gave it to me, my allowance. Did he give you some money?" And he had only given her, I think it was $10 or $20. But he had given me $100.
Mm.
So
why do you think that was? Obviously, you thought that, y'all was getting the same thing.
Well, I believe he gave me more money because I've always been the one he wanted. I hate to say that, and I say that because he's been after me since I was 10 years old. Fifth grade, I was in the 5th grade. I don't know what a man would want with a baby, a child. But I say that because he treated me differently. He let it be known he wanted a virgin. He wants somebody to be his wife that has never been with anybody else. He's always, I don't care what it was it going to the beauty shop. He made sure I got my hair did every week. The allowance he would give me, clothes he would buy me.
And he's at this point pointing all this stuff out to you at the head of the bed.
So I had to write all that stuff down.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got through writing it down, he said, "And this is how you do me." And remind you, I still don't understand what he's talking about until he said to me, "I've been sitting here in this bed, then I would go to the window and see in my binoculars you all the way at the beach."
His binoculars?
He had binoculars. That's how he knew I was out there at the beach playing with one of the young boys of the church. We were just innocent playing. But he didn't like it. So he began to tell me the reason why my parents' marriage did not work. My father wanted my mama to do this. She wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted me to be more submissive to him. He wanted me to, just to be honest and just say it like it is, he wanted me to have my mouth on him. He wanted me to do everything he asked me to do.
He wanted you to have your mouth on him?
Mm-hmm. He would tell me that, "Put your mouth right here." I couldn't do that. I knew that was wrong. I knew that wasn't.
Are you speaking of his privates?
His private part, his penis. Yes. He has numerous of times put his tongue in my mouth. I've never kissed a boy. First time ever kissing anybody was him. And it wasn't nothing willingly on my part, because he would actually force his tongue in my mouth, even when I didn't want to kiss him. He would do that to me. And the sad thing about this is that the young girls in the church thought I had it all. They outside looking in. So was I, outside looking in. Until you come there and your eyes become open. He would tell me all the time, oh, they just want to be you. They want to take your place. They're jealous of you. But all along, he was giving these women in the church reason to dislike me.
So I'm just, hmm. So to put perspective on this, it sounds like he's manipulating you to the point that he brings your parents' problems into the equation to make some comparison to how you are supposed to be with him.
Exactly.
Okay. So his way of making the variance between your folks and you and him is he asks you to perform oral sex on him.
Yes.
Am I hearing this correct?
You're hearing it correctly.
Okay. This is a grown man.
Grown man. He told me that once again, I'm supposed to be his wife whenever I get older. So what he was doing was, Thomas Price was trying to train me how to be a wife he wanted me to be. But it never did work because I never gave no one power over me but God. And I knew that even though I was in a situation that seemed like it took forever for me to get out of just to protect my mom, I kept praying, I kept believing in God, but you know, he was telling me the things that my mom wouldn't do, which caused her marriage to fall. That's what Thomas Price said. So he was preparing me and getting me ready to be the wife he wanted me to be.
And once again, you're a child.
Well, it didn't.
It's as if
well, I wasn't the first child though.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I was the first child. This is a pattern. You think it just started with me? It didn't. Let me take you back. Thomas Price, born in Cleveland, Ohio. He was married to a Georgia Price, where they had 2 sons. And I remember this because we were sitting at the dinner table, and I remember Barbara said to Thomas Price, "Oh, Apostle, your wife, Georgia, she was saved. She was saved. She a saved woman." So I wouldn't say nothing, but I would listen. And then she said, she was more saved than you was. Saying Thomas Price, Thomas Price's wife was more saved than Thomas Price was. So where did it go wrong then? How could you be saved and she be saved and your marriage don't work?
Right.
So Thomas Price had molested girls in Gary, Indiana, Cleveland, Ohio, and he's had sexual relationships with older women in the Arlington church.
Let's talk about that. You brought that up. I believe you said that your uncle and your father at some point kind of spearheaded this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I know you were afraid initially to talk about this because you felt that, you know, your life was being threatened. So what was the straw that broke the camel's back that just pushed you to the point where you couldn't keep your mouth shut, and your father now is in this, your uncle is now in this? And we spoke about you sharing the experience of how they confronted him. And basically, what did that look like? And what brought you to that point that you finally said enough's enough?
I was it was on a Sunday evening, and we had had supper. I was going to take a nap for church Sunday for the night service.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember being in a room by myself. I was in Clem's room. And I was laying on my left side. And I began to lay there. But I was crying. I was crying. I was just talking to God. I was telling God, I'm tired. I'm tired of the abuse. I'm tired of the molestation. I'm tired of being threatened. I was tired. I don't know if I shared this with you or not, but when it first began, the abuse, the molestation with Thomas Price, I I wanted to commit suicide. Um, I remember laying in the bathroom floor. I was in the 6th grade, and I was just laying on the floor crying, and I was talking to God, and I was talking to God because I felt that, you know, I'm on this earth and I'm being abused like this. I didn't do nothing wrong. And so I felt nobody could love me because I felt damaged. Because I'm letting this man, well, I'm not letting him, but he's forcing himself on me. There's nothing that I can do. I know how my dad is. My dad is not going to just sit there and talk to you. He's all about action.
Right.
So I know the type of family I came from.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in a way, as a child, even though he was doing all these bad things to me, I didn't really want my family to retaliate and really hurt him. Because I know my family, just because he's molested me and abused me, I would still pray for him, even as a child. Because I was raised, you even pray for your enemies. You don't pray selfish prayers. So I would still pray for him. But I got tired of it. And I remember I was laying in Clem's bed, and it was my first time ever saying this to God. And I said, God, just hold me. I felt like no one loved me. Because Thomas Price would always say to me, you can tell whoever you want to tell, they'll never believe you. And that stuck with me as a child. That's why I never told anybody.
Mm.
He would always say that they'll never believe you. You're the black sheep of the family. So I believed him. So that Sunday evening, I kept praying and talking to God to where, I was really praying and talking to God. And all of a sudden, I think I drifted off to sleep. And I kept saying, God, just hold me. Just please hold me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I needed his arms around me. Because I had been going through so much.
Not Thomas Price, the Lord.
I wanted God to hold me.
Yes.
And I fell asleep, probably like a minute. And Jonathan, you know, it was like I was in a trance. It was like my body was raised up. I never opened up my eyes, so it was like I was asleep. And the wind was so strong in that room. It's like all the windows were busted out in the house. There was nothing but wind coming through the house. I knew that was God because it's I'm not having a dream. It's reality. I was asleep though, and God came and He just put His arms around me and just held me so tight and like it like raised me up out the bed. I'm still in the bed, but I'm raised up. And He held me. He was so soft. He held me for a while and laid me back down. And I went to sleep.
Mm.
The only thing that saved me was my praying, believing in God. Because I remember the Bible say, put your trust in no man, for man will fail you. God did not make any mistakes. Not one mistake. And the people in the church, as I got older, I began to realize that's their God. Thomas Price is their God. They worship it. They worship Him. Thomas Price used to always say, well, you know, you're saved, so you can't go over your cousin's house. I never known anybody that is saved that can't visit their loved ones,
Right.
their families. But that's what he would do. He would try to alienate you from your family. It was like control.
A cult.
Yeah.
Yeah. A cult is what it is. Yeah.
But I got tired, Jonathan. I really got tired to where I made it up in my mind that when I got 18, I was going to leave. While Thomas Price was thinking he was going to marry me, I was making plans to leave at 18. I knew at 18 could nobody stop me. And I remember you know, I thank God that He's not like man. I At this time I was in the 10th grade. I was in 10th grade, but all my classes were 11th grade classes. I was a year ahead. And so my mom became sick. And so Thomas Price always said, you know, we don't believe in doctors. No, we don't go to the hospital. When you get sick, you don't go to the hospital. So my mom kept getting sick and she kept getting sick. And I remember I called myself quitting school. Even though I was an A student, I called myself quitting school to take care of her. And so she seemed like she kept getting worse. Pale, no skin, no color in her, no nothing. She was just pale. So I remember, because I'm still praying, talking to God, you know. I remember she said, I want you all to bring a chair in my room, me and my sisters, my brothers. And so she was making plans for her funeral. And so, if anything was to happen, Thomas Price would get me.
How's that?
He would. It was said that I would have to live with him. And so I got on my knees and I talked to God. I prayed to God. I told God I don't want to live with him. No, to just don't let my mom die. That's what I said. I said, don't let me lose my mom. I need her. And so I remember one day I walked in her room. She couldn't even keep ice on her stomach. She couldn't keep water on her stomach. And so I forgot it was like on a Saturday or a Sunday. Before that, Barbara, people in the church, women in church, they were walking in my mom's home, taking down her curtains as if she was dead.
Mm.
She had fur coats. Mommy always said that each child, each daughter would get her fur coats. They would bring food, tell us not to eat it. Don't touch this. This is Sister Holly's. So one time they kept bringing food, just different food. Something happened to where my grandmother and my mom's siblings came to the house, like 9 or 10 of them. And I was there and I had been talking to God. And I remember walking down the hallway and I got ready to make a right turn to go into my room when God told me, just as plain, go in there and touch your mom's face. But I had to touch a certain side of her face. He wanted me to touch this side of her face because she was laying on this side. And that was the way I baby see the blood coming out of her mouth. I touched her face and blood came out. I didn't know what to do. I started screaming. I ran outside, but I couldn't get it out. And they told me I fainted, I collapsed outside. That's what made them go in there, my mom's siblings, go in there to check on her. And it was told to me that the doctor cut her 5 times. She didn't bleed. She laid in a bed for a long time. Without getting or receiving medical attention. I asked God not to take her away from us, but we need her here. And they rushed her into the hospital. They had to put her on a stretcher and turn her body upside down so that the blood from her feet could flow through her head to her head. And that's when the doctor told my mom's sisters. They asked my mom's sisters, do your sister have a living will? And they were asking, why are you asking us this? And they said, yes, she do. Because whatever happened to my mom, we were all going to be taken care of. And she told us how much it was, where we could go and live real nicely. They said, yes, she has a living will.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, she's been poisoned.
Say what?
My mom has been poisoned. She was poisoned. I didn't cook. My sisters didn't cook. Only the church people were bringing food into our home.
Mm.
To where the doctor said, get every food in that house and throw it away. But she has been poisoned. And I
Wow.
said, this man wanted me that bad. And I'm saying it now. That was all Thomas Price doing to get me. Because
So
it was
that's
our,
the connection between him. If something happened to your mother, he would be the beneficiary of you.
he gets me. She told me that in front of my siblings.
Before I get off and let you go too far into that, I want to back up you, and it's okay. I mean, you say what you need to say. You know, I'm patient, so I can sit here and just let you vent, say what you need to say. But I do want to go back to the um, situation that you told me about with your uncle and your father visiting this man, and how
Yes.
that played out, and then how this thing went to court and what came out in court.
Yes. When I already had just turned 18, and as I stated, my objective was to turn 18 and leave so that I wouldn't be made to go over there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was I got tired. I was just tired.
Yeah.
And I remember I called my Aunt Mary, my dad's sister, who's deceased now. I called her and asked her if she could come over, because this is the aunt who I will always be around as a child, spending the night over her house. We watching all movies. We did a lot together. I was real close to her. And so I remember she came to the house. I'm sitting on my bed and she's sitting directly across from me on my sister's bed. And I said, hey, Mary, I have to talk to you. And I told her, Thomas Price has been molesting me since I was 10 years old. She didn't know what to do. She even repeated what I said to her. I said, he's been molesting me. I said, can you please help me? And she promised me that she was going to help me. But instead of her helping me, she called Thomas Price and told him that me and my dad and my uncle, we was going to go to his house in Michigan City, Mississippi, and confront him. So my dad came over. I didn't just come out and tell my dad. One of my sisters were eavesdropping and heard me talking to my mom.
Mm-hmm.
That's when my dad and his brother rushed over. And I remember my dad was talking to me in the hallway. He said, I'm going to ask you this one time. Did Thomas Price ever molest you? Did he have sex with you? Did he try to force himself on you? And I said, he's molested me and forced himself on me. I said, but I won't let him have sex with me.
So with all that he tried to do and tried to get you to do, he never succeeded in actually having you all the way, but he basically violated you in many ways.
He did. He never had me sexually, other than not. He never had sexual intercourse.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as him pinching on my breast, sucking on my breast, taking his penis out, or if I'm standing up there getting ready to say goodnight to him, he's sticking his hands down in my panties. He did things like that. I'm just being truthful. And I remember we went to his house in Michigan City to confront him. And it took at least, I want to say about maybe 4 minutes for him to actually come and open up the door. Because remind you, he already knew it was coming because my aunt already gave him heads up. So I remember when we walked in there, it was in a den. Was at the living room. But we were sitting there right there by the fireplace, and he was pacing back and forth. He would not, Thomas Price could not sit down. He was pacing real bad. And he finally asked my dad, would he like to take a seat? My dad said, no, I'm going to stand right here. And he said to Thomas Price, have you been molesting my daughter? And the first time he didn't respond. And then he turned around, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, I need to get my daddy, because I already know what he's going to do. And my dad asked him again. And he said, oh, well, you know how Wendy is. She's fast. She flaunts herself around me.
Hold it. Put a pin in that. So it sounds like you already admitted the fact that you are messing around or molesting the young lady, just in the mere fact that your response would be allegedly. You know how Wendy is. I don't care how you was. You're the pastor. Okay? Right. You're a grown man. If anything, at that point, he should have been with your father and uncle standing there. Seemed like the conversation should have happened. And it should have sounded something like this. You a liar? The truth ain't in you. Why you got your folks here and confront me about this? We're going to get to the bottom of this. And more importantly, how and why do you feel this way about me? What have I ever done besides love you and basically teach you in the gospel? None of this happens. So his response is, well, you know how Wendy is.
She flaunts herself.
She flaunts herself. That ain't what comes out of a pastor's mind, or a pastor's mouth, rather. That is innocent. I'm sorry. That's not the conversation. I'm sorry. I had to interject that.
No, you're fine. I understand, because what I got from that was she shouldn't have been flouncing herself around me. Basically.
And he wouldn't have yielded. The grown man.
Yeah.
The pastor. The apostle.
Yes.
Go ahead. Get me warm.
So I did file charges on him. At the time, I was in my first year of college, and my father and I, we went to, I think, the Northern District, something like that, Mississippi. If I'm not mistaken, that's what it is. So we were going for hearings, and in court was when my eyes really became open to who this man really is.
So you, your father, and who else is in court?
Me and my father.
Okay.
Just me and my dad.
And Thomas Price?
No, he wasn't there. It was.
Okay.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was there because I remember he didn't want to answer one of the questions, and the attorney said, "Your Honor, can you please make him answer this question?" So yeah, he was there, but the whole time we was there, he never said anything. I don't know if he had attorneys that spoke for him on his behalf, but I learned that he had did time for murdering his roommate. I didn't know. It was shocking because, come to find out, the attorney said the roommate was a gay male, and the male and Thomas Price lived together. I don't know what happened in between that, but the man was killed, and they ruled it a homicide. He did time for that murder. And that's crazy. He know everything about us, but we don't know nothing about his life. Only what he chooses to share with us.
And you also told me something to the effect about something else came out with reference to the stuff that you went through as far as other children.
Yes. And I touched on this earlier. Earlier, I said that he had a wife named Georgia Price and 2 sons. Remember that?
Yes.
He has a shoebox in his file cabinet that he keeps his checks. These checks are checks that he sent to his wife to take care of his children, whether it's through child support or if he's just paying it, like giving on his own. And I remember it was so much money in there. And as I'm looking at it, they never been cashed. And I didn't understand it. And I said, your sons never, no, they never got their money. I remember he saying, oh, they're old now. They're older now. But Georgia ended up divorcing Thomas Price because he had been molesting young girls in that church. So basically, he was ran out of that church. Remember when I told you that Barbara said his wife was more spiritual than he was? Because she was. 2 people that are so-called living right, living holy, why would the marriage end? And that was my question. And I asked him, so if you're both living right, why did your marriage end? He never could answer that. I found out later that he was claiming that one of the, I guess the youngest son was not his son. They're both his sons. But he just needed an excuse to get married again because he preaches about adultery, fornication. He preaches about it, but yet he's doing it. He's been doing it. he's supposed to have a baby by some young girl. He got pregnant, but it was just something that has followed him. And once you like that, you can't just really cut it off. Stop doing it unless you really seek help.
Did any of that information come out while y'all were in court?
The only information that came out was that he had been molesting young girls. I don't know if it was Cleveland, Ohio, or Gary, Indiana, but I'm thinking it was Cleveland, Ohio.
So how did that come out in court?
As with you, I began to talk to the judge about everything he's done to me. His attorney was saying that I was making up stories. But then you have a track record of doing the same thing in another state.
Wow. So that's on the books.
Yes.
Hmm. My goodness. Huh.
You know,
This is your pastor.
former pastor.
Yeah, former pastor.
You know, for a long time, I blame myself because when you're that young, you do know right from wrong, but a lot of times you can be put in a position to where you're trying to protect your family and then keep this secret of what this man is doing to me. So I was willing to go through that back over again.
So how did this, in the grand scale of things, how did this affect relationships in your life?
I don't trust. You know, and to look back over my past relationships, I never really knew that it had it took effect on my life. Never been married. I have grandchildren now. I'm always checking them to make sure nobody violated them. Nobody been touching them down there. I'm always checking to make sure that they are okay. I don't trust them being around people because of what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships don't work, but I had to realize that it starts with myself, that I couldn't be a victim anymore, that I had to get up and take care of myself
Mm-hmm.
and continue to pray and put God first because, I take no credit. That came from me praying and talking to God when I was fasting. And a lot of people ask me, not a lot, but this young lady, she asked me, she said, Wendy, after all the things that you've been through, being molested, tortured, she said, what, you don't blame God? And I remember telling her, God is who kept me.
Mm.
This man could have stabbed me, blew my head off, anything.
And he threatened to kill you, what you told me earlier. He actually threatened to kill you.
Yes.
On what basis?
He didn't want, Thomas Price got tired of me rejecting him. He wasn't the pastor that the congregation knew. He is extremely forceful. He gives you, because in his mind, I guess he really thought I was going to be his wife. He felt like it gave him authority or power to control me,
Mm-hmm.
what to wear, how to wear it, who not to talk to.
It brings up a point that you mentioned. You talked about earlier how he used to um, shop for you, buy you clothes, and you mentioned something about he was buying you lingerie
He has.
as a child.
I wasn't even. I had to have been about. I want to say about 13. I was still a child.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he has bought me clothes, suits. I mean, up in the money for a child this young. I don't know a lot of children unless their parents are rich to where, you know, you're spending $800 on me a suit, taking me shopping. I mean,
And he's allegedly your godfather, but the Lord's telling him that he wants you to learn how to cook over there. And then the Lord changed his mind and said that he wants you to be his wife. The Lord told him that. And so he's spending all this money on you because, he just love you and, he's just concerned about you because, he's your pastor and you're his goddaughter.
former pastor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to be very vexed. I mean,
Okay.
real vexed. But it's just God's grace keeping me.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to just really come out and just talk to put it on social media. But the reason why I did it, the reason why I wanted to help someone is because he's still doing it.
2024.
2024 at Original Bible Church, he's still molesting girls. The people in the church has turned a deaf ear. And when you're worshiping somebody like they worship Thomas Price, it's like saying nothing else matters. They don't care about nothing else. Only what Thomas Price tell them to do or what he'd like for them to do. That's it.
I spoke on some of this in some of my previous videos about deceptive and lying pastors. Do you have one? And some of the things that you're speaking on in that video or series of videos was put out 2 years ago. And we hadn't even talked about any of this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing. I'm looking at how this is unfolding and just in this dispensation of time. And, it's being laid on your heart to basically talk about these issues about your former pastor, which, by the way, you told me something. You said when you got old enough to leave, you spoke about how the pastor sent several people to you to try to reel you back into the cultic environment.
Yes.
Who came to you and what did they say?
Leah, well, first, Richard Field was the first person to reach out. He called me one night and I didn't go to church. And so
And who is this gentleman?
Richard Fields, he's the assistant pastor. Well, at least that's what he was when I left.
Okay.
Assistant pastor. But he called me and started saying, "Oh, what you doing? You have everything you could ever want. He a good man. He a good man to you. He a good man." That's all I kept hearing. He's a good man. And I asked him, I said, "Don't call my house anymore." He kept saying, "Well, Apostle love you. That's he really loved you. He just looking out for you." And he kept doing it to where I had to go in and give him information about his marriage so he can stop calling my phone. Because Thomas Price used to say, I'm going to teach you everything, how to be a good wife. Because it was like, at first he used to say that his wife was coming from overseas. He used to always say that to me.
He said what now?
That his wife is going to come from overseas.
Wait a minute. Hold up. Back up. Hold on. Let's put that transmission in reverse. Your former pastor said that his wife was coming from overseas. Where did he get that intel from?
He would say that he would stand up in church and say that God said that his wife is coming from overseas.
So, okay. So is God confused? Does
No.
God have a schizophrenic personality? Is he?
He's
And I
not
say
a God.
that. I say that, because it's a rhetorical question. He's not the author of confusion. So how God gonna tell you that he gonna give you a wife from overseas, and you get up in church and say this in front of the church folks, and the church folks hear this, mind you, and he telling you that God told him that you're gonna be his wife.
That's what he said.
So which one is it? God ain't the author of confusion.
No, he's not.
So is it overseas, or apparently he didn't get the one overseas and he didn't get you. So is God a liar?
No, he's not. He's not a liar.
No, he's not a liar. We know
at the same time, his wife didn't come from overseas either. That he's married to now, unless they made Somerville a
ocean, continent.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were saying that the assistant calls you.
He kept calling me, telling me basically I was doing wrong toward the pastor, that I need to go back to church. And then probably some months ago, Leon Ghosted, he came to my house. He didn't come inside, but he was outside in his truck.
And he is?
Leon Ghosted is the
for those that don't know that are watching this.
Okay, I don't know his position in the church.
Assistant pastor.
Oh, okay. He was just one of the ministers in the church when I was there. But he came to my home and I went out. He asked me to come outside. I did. I got in the passenger side of his truck. And he told me that he was there because Thomas Price told him to come talk to me. And I told him, I don't want to talk. He kept insisting that he talk to me. He told me I was doing the pastor wrong. Any young girl would love to be in my place.
And what place is that? Being molested? Is that the place that any young girl would love to be in? Being molested, violated, persecuted, called a liar, thrown out of life's back door, ostracized, criticized for all the hell that you went through.
I went through a lot.
That's the place that the young ladies would be proud to be in. Carry on.
I told him that I wasn't coming back. He offered to take me to that little barbecue place across the street. I declined that. I told him that I'd never step a foot back in that church again. And I asked him, you all trying to be like him, but what about the kids in church that's being hurt? 10 whole years of being violated. Not one person helped me. Not one. I have to make a difference.
I'll tell you this, Wendy. I mean, the information that you have put out tonight it's shocking. It's sad. It really is. There's not anybody that has any peace of conscience towards God and that will see this and would say that you're lying. And notice I said any piece of conscience, not an entire consciousness, a piece of consciousness towards God, and can sit here and listen to such detail, the specifics of events, time frames, and could sit here and call you a liar. I am curious to know this. Do you personally know of anybody, past, present, that has in the church gone through any such things such as yourself, or have experienced any such things as yourself?
Yes. Once it was out that Thomas Price had been molesting me, we had a few young ladies stand up and say that they've been, molested, groped on, touched by him as well.
Mm. Let me say this before I do. Is there anything that you feel that is pertinent that people need to know that have not heard from you? Is there any information, or is there anything that you feel needs to be known in this? How this has, whether it be how it's helped you, how it's strengthened you, how it's changed you for the better and or worse? Because I believe that there's a segment of people that's going to hear this, and they're going to be in a situation that is similar to yours, or just for the sake of just being aware of what you went through and knowing what to look for in their pastors. This information is certainly going to serve that purpose. But I wanted to know, is there anything that you'd like to add to our listening audience tonight? Is there anything that you would like to tell them about this that helped you get through this? We know God is the source of our strength. We know that He is our strength, but there's a natural element to this. We often look at, situations like this and abuse and, being molested, and we brush it off as, it's just something that, just happens.
Exactly.
But, it has effects. I heard you mention earlier about suicide. These are the type of events right in the church. These are the type of things that drive people to alcoholism and drugs, and in your case, even contemplating suicide. And you would think that those that are spiritual in the church, that are around this man and that are around this environment, would have some sense or some degree of awareness spiritually, that they would be able to tap in, and God would talk to these folks and show them. And none of that happened.
None of it.
Now, I say to you, those that are looking at this, watch your children. Be mindful where your children go. And everything that say, thus saith the Lord God, I would advise you to check that, because God is not going to put your child in harm's way. I don't care who he is, apostle, whoever, bishop, whoever. God ain't going to do it. And let me speak to the individuals that are part of this ministry that this young lady has spoken on today. Shame on you. Shame on you. And God's going to hold blood and accountability on your heads. I wasn't there, but I felt in the spirit what this woman was saying was truth. And I said when I started this program, the truth don't need no backing. It don't need no alibi. It stands all by itself. It stands on its own 2 feet, and it don't need nothing to back it. Now, how could you, so-called saints, sit up and listen to such detail, listen to, and this is years and decades ago. You mean to tell me that you didn't have a spiritual individual? Or wait a minute. Maybe perhaps you did know about it, but you were so vested in your apostle or your pastor that you didn't want that to be known. Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, maybe that was it. You had such shame that the only resolution that you could come up with is to call this child a liar. And I say child because that was what she was. Call her a liar, say that it was fabricated, say that she just concocted all these details up in herself and in her mind. Let me tell you something. For this woman to sit here and for her to have the courage and boldness to speak on these things, there's what's called defamation of character that you can be charged with. Nobody's going to come on camera, sit here and relay the things that this woman has relayed with such detail and with the knowledge of knowing that you can get in some major trouble for defamation of character and all sorts of assassination of character, and get up on camera and say the things that she said today. And you mean to tell me in a natural mind you can feel that, but you spirituals, y'all can't pick up on none of this? Y'all not picking up the frequency of the truth here? You mean to tell me that you are so blinded by your pastor, your apostle, that you see and you heard no truth in this? You that blind? You so obsessed with protecting a man that you would for years and decades be responsible for almost causing this young lady to miss God, to commit suicide. And you mean to tell me you good with that? Y'all shout, y'all speak in tongues, y'all run the aisles. You mean to tell me in all that joy that y'all got, the spirit of the true and living God ain't bearing witness? He not talking to none of y'all about none of this. So she just concocting all this up in her head. She just been carrying all this, and she just been lying. Let me tell you what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a demonic influence. Yes, it's in your so-called man of who? Not God. You can't stand in Christ's stead and do the things that this young lady talked about, whether it's her pastor former or whether it's your pastor. You can't sit in Christ's stead, preach the gospel, and preach the gospel to the extent that you living it and that it's effective. You can't do it. You came out here, you spoke with what I call conviction. You spoke on the things that happened to you as they happened. And rest assured, last time I come on here, I spoke on the big reveal 2 years ago. And I spoke on there was going to be a lot of exposing happening. And again, this was prior to you. And I find it so ironic that here you are sitting here and you're exposing these no good pastors. And it's happening. And it's fine time that it do. I want to tell you thank you. I want to tell you thank you. I want to tell you thank you for the courage that you had to stand, to sit here today, and for you to really just pour your heart out, and for you to speak on these things. And I know it wasn't easy for you because you had to go back in your mind and you had to literally relive these things. And I'm sure that you've gotten counseling from it. We've talked and getting counseling and so forth. These things, people often can dismiss you and they write you off, never concerned about what you've been through and how it's affected you in your life and how you're not able to do certain things, or as you pointed out, your trust. But I'm here to tell you something. God is bigger than any problem. God is bigger than any pastor. God is bigger than any situation. And I think that he's given you the strength, and he's going to continue to strengthen you. And I will say to you to keep your head up and you keep telling your story, because I believe that this is going to help somebody that's currently going in this situation, has been through it, and perhaps they needed direction, and maybe they just needed just to hear what you had to say to give them the courage that they needed to do what you just did. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Absolutely nothing. I'll say to you, keep your head up. No matter what they say, no matter who said that you was a liar, no matter who called you a liar, you keep your head up. Because the truth, the truth don't need no alibi. No, it don't need no alibi. You keep your head up.
Yeah.
God's got you. And this ain't the last of it. This is not the last of it. Oh, it's coming up again. Trust you me, it's coming up again. And to my audience, I thank you for tuning in with us tonight. For those of you that have looked at this, you all keep this young lady in your prayers, because she's going to need them. Because it's not over. There are things that we could have talked about, a whole lot more. We just scratched the surface. But this is something that needs to be talked about. Oftentimes in abusive situations with pastors and the positions that they hold, they utilize that authority to, instill fear and intimidation. And in this case, in a child, what could she do? I understand it. What could she say? Who gonna believe her? And for those of you that was in the ministry that may perhaps be looking for a video and perhaps stumble across this one and take it back to your pastor, shame on you once again, because God is not one who will block your eyes, spiritual eyes. He's an equal opportunist. And all you got to do is get on your knees. And for those of you that want the confirmation, God is not unjust. He's a God that would deceive you and have you thinking that this woman is lying not only about this man, but she's lying about him. Get on your knees. Why don't you pray about it? Why don't you talk to your God? I ain't talking about your pastor either. I'm talking about the one that created you. Why don't you talk to him and check in and see what he got to say on what this young lady said tonight? I guarantee you'll get some confirmation. Some of you don't want it because you already know what she's saying is true. You just kept it secret and hidden for all these years, hoping that this day would not come. Here it is. Here it is. The big reveal is here. The big reveal. Anyway, Wendy, appreciate you. Thank you for coming out, for sharing your story. Be encouraged.
Thank you for having me and for allowing me to share your platform. I didn't want to come out. I just wanted to keep things to myself because I'm very private, but if I can help one child, I've done enough. Because it's still going on with him. And a stop needs to be done, We need to save these children. I've been there. I was there for 10 years. And I knew that I had to say something because, like I said, God kept me. He took care of me. He's still taking care of me. But I thank God for the parents that I have that raised me to trust God, to believe in God, believe that Jesus died on the cross for our sins. talking and praying is what kept me sane. It kept me sane.
Hmm.
I always say if I had to do this back over again, I'd do it back over again because God kept me still. He showed me, He's told me many a times, I saved you because you believe in me.
As you were talking, I had this thought. Some of you all that are listening to me now, in some of these churches, and perhaps the church that this young lady came from, some of you all believe in your pastor so much, you believe that what he speaks and what he tells you, whether it happened or whether it didn't happen, holds so much weight that some of you all will follow this man straight to hell.
Mm-hmm.
That's how strong y'all's conviction are when it comes to this man and these pastors. You all will listen to this man, your pastor, and your conviction is so strong to the point that you will follow a man straight to hell. In fact, you believe more in what come out of his natural lips of clay than what come from the Spirit itself. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in what? Truth.
Mm-hmm.
She's speaking truth. And you mean to tell me you can't tap into that spirit and that truth that God is to confirm and to basically hear what this woman is saying, and all that you can come out of that with is what your pastor say happened and what didn't happen? If God is a spirit and you got to worship him in spirit and in truth, that means that what you got to get from him comes from the spiritual realm, and it is verified by the truth. Again, the truth don't need no alibi. It don't need no backing.
Mm-mm.
It stands on its own. God don't need no cheerleading section. He don't need no verification. If he said it, that settles it. God is not a man that he should lie, nor is he the son of man that he should repent. If he said it, will he not do it? And y'all spirituals, decades. Y'all mean to tell me y'all can't pick up none of this? Y'all are so convicted by a man that you can hear truth and you not touched by none of it? You not moved? Shame on y'all. Shame on you. And I will tell you that to your face, look you straight in your eyes like I'm looking at this camera. Shame on you. Because you had the opportunity to make a difference. You could have stood up and said something. And I know that there were a lot of you that seen a situation happen and you knew in your spirit, that spirit again, the spirit of truth was telling you something ain't right about this. But you didn't say nothing. You didn't do nothing. Many of you in these churches, you see the same stuff and you see the same signs and stuff that this woman talked about happening. And you know in your spirit, the spirit bearing witness to the truth. Something ain't right with this. But you so intimidated, you have so much fear about what a man gonna do or he gonna throw me out of church if I open my mouth and touch not thine anointed, do thy prophet no harm. So you keep your mouth shut. You don't say nothing. We thank you. We thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We thank you. In fact, we acknowledge the bravery, we acknowledge the courage that you have on today to sit here and give us nothing but truth. And whether or not they walk away from this video, those who will see it, and they still say you lying, or they say that you just made up and just fabricated all this in your head, oftentimes those that are in power, this is what they do. They take their position of power and their influence, and for those that they can influence and the individuals that are under them, it's easy. That's the easy part. They have so much credibility. Then surely this could not be my man of God that did all these things. This child is lying. This child is just making up all of these fairy tales in their head. And, devil just putting all this in you, huh? You just woke up one morning and just, all of a sudden, you just decided that, you wanted to be a fairy tale and speak all these lies. You good. In his eyes, you good. And when I say good, not because you're so good, I'm saying good because you speak the truth. That's all you need to do. You speak the truth, he's going to take care of the rest of it. Anyway, we thank you all for another episode, sitting in with JW and Wendy Holley. And if any of you all need to reach out to me, or you need to talk to this young lady and you want to have her on your show and or interview her, reach out to me. Information station JW at gmail.com. Once again, that's information station JW, all one word, INFORMATION STATION JW at gmail.com. Okay? All right? That's all we have for tonight. And we're not through with this. Oh no, this is just the beginning. This is just a crack. Just a peep into the shadow of what is to come. I know it's been a while for you all, so those have been checking the channel, waiting for something to come out so you can go and report it back to those who are what I call minions and looking for things to, keep up with. We got a good one for you. Till next time. Peace. Oh, you thought I was gone? No, I'm back. I got one thing to say. You pastors that fit the narrative of this story, you're not fit to be in the pulpit. You're not fit to preach the gospel. Why don't you step out the pulpit? Why don't you just sit down? Because you're not fit to say nothing about nothing pertaining to the Lord. You know you're not fit. You ain't been fit for the longest. And yet you're sitting here and you got the folks in shackles and in bondage. God got your name. He got your address. He see you. Big reveal, sir. It's here. I'm gone this time for real, though. Peace.